1,
2,
3,
4.
Hey, welcome to episode 18 of The Hills Have Nerds, the only podcast guaranteed to keep you safe during the zombie apocalypse. Today, we're talking grotesque monsters and heinous experiments. It's time to enter the house of Resident Evil.
And then we kick down the door. Boom.
Yeah, just kick the door in and all of us come in. It's like, where's the evil residents at? Come on.
I just come back from Japan, so I think it is called Biohazard.
Oh, shut up, you weeb.
Yep. Actually,
Actually,
Actually, I was gonna sit here and be like, I'm the one with glasses, and I was like, wait a minute, all of us are glasses.
we all,
yeah, we all have glasses.
fool.
Josh ain't in here. Haha.
you dare approach me.
Yeah, so if y'all notice, Josh wasn't here to do a lovely reading of our opening. So, unfortunately, y'all had to listen to me. He is out for the evening. So, it'll just be me, Cody, and I'll be joined by Travis here. We let him out of the basement again.
Yes, once again, they let me come up and eat scraps off of the floor.
I forgot to sweep them up. I'll get those next time. And unfortunately, we're also joined by Aaron,
Oh, I'm last.
Yeah, I had to include Travis first. It's special when he comes out.
Well, that's what they say about me, is I'm special.
Just because your mom says it doesn't mean anything.
That's the only one that matters. Thank you.
Fair enough.
What we
The
talking about
intro,
today?
I guess you all can tell we're talking Resident Evil today. So, what do you two know about Resident Evil? Because I'm the one that's on the scale here for that, or on the spectrum.
Listen, I lived Resident Evil.
What does that mean?
Universal's Halloween Horror Nights was actually Resident Evil, and it was really cool. I'm mostly bragging about how I went to Japan and had a good time, and now I'm
I would have
miserable.
loved to have been there for the Resident Evil part of that.
Oh, it was so cool.
I don't have as much experience with the earlier Resident Evils. So like I don't really have experience with 1, 2, and 3, but I have experience with the later ones. I guess later isn't really the right way to say it. 4 and 5, and I know that a lot of people are very divided about 5, but 5 is personally my favorite for cooperative reasons.
Yeah, 5 is a fun co-op game. I'll give it that. It's better than 6, definitely.
So
6 was fun going through it blind, but just like Resident Evil 5, those games didn't deserve that name.
I have played. So I played all the way through 3. I played a little bit of 1 and 2 before, but I've played completely. 3 was basically when I really got into it. I played all the way through 3, and I played 4, 5, and 6. I did not play 7 and 8, but I've watched Cody play it enough that I might as well play it.
Yeah, I have played through all of them a asinine amount of times. So it's insane.
And I want to point out, it was the original 3 that I played. I actually didn't play the remake of 3, but I watched you play it. It made me so sad.
The remake of 3 was so disappointing.
Yeah. So the thing I liked about 6, it was really cool. I liked they had a good idea, but it was just so spread out. But I really enjoyed the mode where you could hop into someone's game as a zombie. It was such a cool idea that I could hop in and be the zombie to give someone difficulty, because it's not just an AI; it's now a player playing the zombie. Except for a lot of times you'd hop in and they'd be like, as soon as you load in, they're running past you and they're gone. And you're like, well,
it's a neat idea, but
yeah,
poorly executed.
It was, but it was such a cool idea. I loved just jumping into people's games, even if I missed the chance to pretty much do anything. But yeah, but that's I actually know a little bit. I don't think I know nearly as much as you, but.
So, what do you know about the making of Resident Evil?
I know a lot that we've talked about on here, and we've talked about it personally. I know we'll get more into it. About how it started, and I knew a lot about the making of Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4 was interesting. That would be a whole topic on its own. But,
yeah,
I think I was wanting mainly to focus on like the origin of the game.
Yeah, I watched the
origin of the series. Yeah, what happened by Matt McMuscles is amazing. You should check those out. You get some pretty interesting insight into what happened behind some of these games.
Oh yeah,
but for the creation of Resident Evil, we have to actually go back to our JRPG episode and mention again Sweet Home.
Good old Sweet Home.
Yeah.
Not the Alabama kind.
Yeah. Sweet Home, Alabama. Woo. Get me turned here, boys. No, Resident Evil was heavily inspired by Sweet Home, which also coincidentally happened to be published by Capcom.
What a coincidence.
Oh, you're right. It's insane. Just
what a Capcomidence.
What a beast.
It is weird that they had Sweet Home, and as far as I know, Sweet Home was a pretty decent success. And instead of making like a sequel, they were like, why don't we make a game like Sweet Home?
Well, Sweet Home was based on a movie, and they were given a lot of creative freedom with the game. Like they told them that there's a lot of stuff that won't translate to a game from the movie. Well, I mean, this was in what is it, like 89, I think, maybe 88. I can't remember exactly when Sweet Home came out, but they gave them a lot of creative freedom, and it's like, here, just make something loosely based on the movie, make it a good game, and we'll call it a day on that.
Yep. So, Sweet Home came out in 89.
89? Hey, I remembered.
Yep.
But they were not really expecting to make any kind of sequel to it because there wasn't a sequel to the source material. It was worked on by the director of Ghosts and Goblins, who is Tokoro Fujiwara.
Oh, Fujiwara.
And Fujiwara would be selected after working on Sweet Home to just work on an upcoming horror game from Capcom. And I think it was in 94. Yeah, I've got it right down here. It was in 1994. They had a designer, Koji Oda, would be hired on to the project that was now just simply titled Horror Game.
Horror Game. I mean, honestly, they did a lot of code names and stuff for, I know, like early projects. And I mean, really, that's just a simple way to do it.
Oh, yeah, it's perfectly named.
I wonder what they're working on.
Horror game.
Yeah, I wonder what they're working on. Probably that horror game.
Makes me think of a lot of
some spooky game over there. It's fine.
Makes me think of like Banjo-Kazooie's initial conception was like Project Dream.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it had something to do with like a pirate too, didn't it?
It was like you were a kid on an island and you had a bear companion, like an anthropomorphic bear that was like your buddy, and then they like dropped the kid angle, went with the bear angle, yada yada yada. We ended up with Banjo-Kazooie. But that's neither horror nor Resident Evil.
I think the story for that was the pirate was like the main antagonist, and that's the pirate that you run in Banjo 2. You're talking about how a bear stole his spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I seem to remember that.
Yeah, but we were, going off on a very non-horror
as the three of us probably will.
Where's Josh to hold us together? Oh no.
we are oft to do.
I know.
It's a shame that Josh is the one that holds us straight.
Oh, I know. It's a sad day. I mean, I can't say much, but
Yeah, well.
But anyways, yeah, it was called Horror Game, and it was originally being developed for the SNES, right?
Yeah, it was originally being developed and as a spiritual successor to Sweet Home on the Super Nintendo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
So,
Super Famicom, but whatever. Same thing.
yeah, Super Famicom in Japan, but SNES here, if you want to get real technical.
Potato, tomato.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I do because I just come back from Japan.
Did you pick up a Famicom while you were over there?
No, but one of the guys I was with did. He actually picked up a Famicom, and we played the Yu Yu Hakusho game.
There was a Yu Yu Hakusho game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the topic for another day.
Yeah.
Yu Yu Hakusho, I could talk about it for a while
Yeah.
too.
So I even though I edited the episode, care to go over a little bit of Sweet Home just to help me jog my memory, but just to like give more of an idea of like what we were starting with moving forward into Resident Evil.
Yeah, Sweet Home was a RPG that actually used a lot of survival horror mechanics that we think of today from the like Resident Evil would have started.
Mm-hmm.
Technically started with Sweet Home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, you have limited inventory space, and everything you pick up, and that's in your inventory. Items are taking that up. Your equipment's taking that up, and you're having to pass items back and forth between characters. So there's that. Quick time events was in this. I believe it was probably the second game ish to have them.
That's wild.
Dragon's Lair, I think, was first. But.
That's wild to think about that QTEs existed that far back. I always thought that QTEs were this like semi-modern, like God of War was kind of like a big pioneer for those.
I think
Asura's Wrath is all QTEs.
We looked it up at one time. I think QTEs first appeared back in like '83. Was it? Yeah, Dragon Slayer.
Technically Dragon Slayer.
One.
So,
but Sweet Home had QTE lot things. Like you would be walking along, and all of a sudden, like a chandelier would fall, and you have to dive one direction, either left, right, or forward or whatever. And if you don't do anything fast enough, you take some damage. But I mean, it's not a difficult thing to hit the direction fast enough.
And it was based off of the movie with the same name about 5 filmmakers that were going through this old mansion that ended up being riddled with ghosts.
Oh.
Yeah. But the game also has permadeath. So if any of your characters die, they're just dead, and along with the special item that they carried. So every character would carry a special item. Like one character had a lighter to be able to light candles and stuff. One had a vacuum to be able to clean the paintings off that you needed to take pictures of. And one of them actually carried the camera. But you could find replacements for all the items to pick up and carry with your characters, but then that takes up an inventory slot.
Right. That's so wow.
It's actually a really interesting RPG, and honestly very progressive for when it came out.
Okay, just a quick Wikipedia. It said that the RPG is set within a mansion that has a cohesive interactive layout. There are 5 playable characters who can venture solo or explore in teams of 2 or 3. The players can switch between characters and parties at any time. The 5 characters each have a unique item that's necessary to complete the game: a camera, a lighter, a med kit, a lockpick, and a vacuum cleaner. Along with these items are others that can be picked up and dropped anywhere and retrieved later by other characters.
And that's just so that the team that's got, like, if you go somewhere and you need the lockpick and that guy's with the other team, you could pick up a lockpick and carry it with the other team. So you don't have to keep going back and forth and getting characters and backtracking everywhere.
Yeah.
So I mean, they really put a lot of effort into this, and I mean, it done really well. It seemed
I,
really interesting too.
I think didn't Lee play this recently on his stream?
Uh,
I want to say.
maybe if he did, I missed it. I'm not sure.
I think I just remember sharing him playing it on the stream, but I don't remember. I'm sorry, Lee. I apologize. But
So yeah, that's
yeah,
that's essentially what we're looking at as
our
a
starting.
heavy inspiration.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And it's actually in a big mansion as well.
Yeah.
But that's not the inspiration for the mansion in Resident Evil, which we'll get there.
Yeah. Even though I think at one time Capcom was like, hey, we want this to take place in a mansion.
Well, yeah.
But it wasn't specifically Sweet Home's Mansion. Yeah.
But they had moved the development for horror game from the Super Nintendo to the PS1 because PS1 was coming out and it was like, hey, with this new system, new graphics, everything, we're gonna have an easier time getting everything. Like, it's just gonna be a much better way to get our game done. And they would actually hire a programmer named Yasuhiro Ampo, and that would be a big hire for the series as a whole because Ampo would actually go on to direct Resident Evil Revelations 2, the RE2 remake, and RE4 remake. I mean, dude's got some pedigree directing some of these Resident Evil games now.
Some of the best ones.
I was going to say, I haven't played through much of the RE2 remake, but it is one of the most gorgeous games I've ever seen. And the RE4 remake, I was nervous about that remake coming out because I love the original so much. I've played it on almost every single console that it has ever been released for. And that game was just so well crafted. So I was nervous, but like so insanely hyped for that one. And it delivered in full. Like I was so happy.
I was cautiously optimistic for it.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah,
very cautiously, especially after the RE3 remake. I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
that's what notice. Ampo didn't direct RE3 remake.
It's interesting to hear you talk about your dislike of the RE3 remake because in the small circles that I bounce around in, I've always heard people really liked the game, but I think that was specifically in a context of speed running. Now that the more that I think about it,
well, it's one of those RE2 remake. If we're looking at them as just a game, I beat RE2 remake first run on Leon in about, I want to say about 6-7 hours, just kind of running through, and then I had Claire's story to run through, which is pretty similar, but there's a few differences. About another 6-ish hours, so it's roughly about a 11 to 12 hour game for first playthrough. If you're going through exploring a ton, if you're not, it's probably only like 9. I beat RE2 remake and or RE3 remake in 6. I mean, that's it. It's done.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, they cut out whole sections. Nemesis is a complete non-issue the entire time. Like, I wasn't scared of him. I could just run at him and not care. I didn't care that he was in the room with me anytime he showed up. And that's just complete opposite of what that PS1 game was.
Oh yeah, that's original RE3. I got terrified every time I'd walk into a room and you hear stars. I'd just oh geez, I'd be like, oh nope, don't want to go in there. But that's watching Cody play the third remake. I was like, this guy's nothing. I mean, you stood at one point and he would just stand there and not come near you.
Yeah, and I could go on ragging on it for a while, but I mean, it still controls and plays super well. But that's just because they copy and pasted RE2 remake.
Yeah,
it was a lazy cash grab of a remake, is what it was.
Okay. Glad to get that clarification. Just because, like I said, I've heard very different things about it, but that's interesting to hear.
if I'm going to
Yeah.
sit down and play it, it's still fun to play. It's just
Yeah,
very disappointing.
I would
Yeah.
say it's probably a pretty good game for people who haven't played the first one and know Nemesis is the biggest disappointment as far as I could tell.
Like knowing the like full nuances and things like that of the original.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
Okay, so Ampo directed all these, but whenever he was hired, they actually looked at him and went, "Go play Sweet Home before we get in on everything else." Okay, go play Sweet Home, and then we'll work on everything. So I guess Ampo went out and played Sweet Home.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, if it's especially they wanted it to be a successor, then a spiritual successor, then I mean, I think it's important for you to know what it's coming from.
Yeah, and I mean it ends up straying really far from Sweet Home, honestly, but you can still see some of the inspirations in it, and it's honestly it's kind of nice to see them.
Look at that. A company telling somebody that's working for them to go and look at the source material. Halo TV show.
I know. I wish a lot of like new games and a lot of new movies and stuff would really look at the source material. So it's
Resident
like,
Evil series.
oh, let's not get into
That's a whole episode on its own. So, let's just, but yeah, after Ampo is hired, they would soon hire the man who would become known as the father of Resident Evil, basically, and that is Shinji Mikami. And Mikami, whenever he was hired, was told they wanted to use systems from Sweet Home, and he was the one that they said, "Hey, we want to have this take place in a mansion, kind of like Sweet Home." But the mansion was actually inspired by the Overlook Hotel from The Shining.
oh,
Just a neat little insert that I seen with them. I was looking up stuff.
And now that you bring that up, yeah, like just from the few things that I have seen from that first game, yeah, that makes total sense. That makes full total sense. That's what's.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
The first thing my brain came to was like, you know what? They both had these big stairs in the middle, and then I thought, oh, I think most mansions have those. So,
Well, it's like the Overlook's not really a mansion. It's a hotel, which it may have started. It may have started out as a mansion. I can't remember the full story. And I mean, the Overlook is based on the Stanley Hotel. So, and honestly, I don't remember the story for the Stanley Hotel either. It's been a while since I looked at that.
Too many hotels, too many mansions.
Well, the Stanley Hotel is in Colorado, but Stephen King had based. I'm pretty sure it was a Stanley Hotel, the Overlook on the Stanley. Going back to Mikami, he takes the mansion inspiration and Sweet Home, and then basically disappears for 6 months. He spends 6 months working alone, writing out stuff, drawing out stuff, and he finally comes back to Fujiwara with 49 pages of a script, and it just said several drawings of what the screen would look like. And I can't find any kind of drawing that he did, but I did find a image of what's supposed to be a early concept art for the game whenever they were originally planning it on being a FPS. Because whenever they moved over to the PS1 and started doing everything, they decided that an FPS would be the best way to go. And if you guys want to, I think he posted it in our Nerd Notes channel if you guys want to look at that.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at. Honestly, that's terrifying. Even if as just a concept to look at that and be like, yeah, this is what we're gonna this is what we're gonna lead the PS1 with, was this first person shooter horror spiritual successor, RPG, everything else.
This amalgamation of things.
Yeah.
Well, the painting style there looks really freaky too, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll post the image on Facebook whenever
Yeah.
we get everything, so just so everybody can see. But I can't find anywhere where this has been confirmed or denied as an actual early concept art. Nobody has said anything that I could find. So, but I figured, the game was starting as an FPS. This showed up is worth looking at anyway.
Oh, for sure. That's, the thing with the first person is like it throws you in the perspective of the player, of the character. So it puts you more in the danger of like a zombie. So that would have been cool, but don't get me wrong. I'm glad they went where they did.
Well, that's Mikami, whenever he was developing it, said that he felt, again, first person would make everything feel more personal and make the enemies more terrifying for you to have to sit there and stare at them that close to you.
Well, yeah,
for sure. Which, I mean, let me think here. There was a first person Resident Evil game that released on PS1, wasn't there?
Survivor.
Survivor.
PS1.
Yes.
I know
Yeah,
they
it was
did on the
PS1.
Wii, didn't they?
Yeah, there was.
There was Umbrella Chronicles and Dark Side Chronicles on the Wii.
Yeah.
But Survivor was an actual, like, you could move around in a 3D space, where Umbrella Chronicles and Dark Side Chronicles were just rail shooters.
Heck
Survivor was a more actual FPS, but it wasn't great, honestly. I beat it in, I think, 30 minutes while testing a system one day. By the time I worked at Page 3.
Dang.
Yeah, I think I just beat it in 30. It just ran past everything.
Yeah, I didn't play any of the side ones.
I mean, I think there's one on PS2 called Deadly Aim as well. But I've not played it, actually.
Yeah, I see that one come through a lot at the store.
So
they began developing it as a first person. What changed their mind to put it as third person?
Mikami played it a few times and said he wasn't liking the feel of it, but also system limitations, hardware limitations. It was originally part of the reason for doing first person was so they didn't have to render your character model. And they were trying to, they were having to render the entire environment in first person, and then have like the zombies and dogs and birds, bats, whatever, all flying around, moving around in that space, and the system wasn't capable of handling all of it at once. So they looked back at Alone in the Dark, a Eldritch style game, and also another survival horror game, where all the backgrounds were pre-rendered and it gave you static camera angles. So as the character moved around, it would move the camera to show everything a little bit better in the area that you're at, but still have a limited view. And Mikami said that he kind of liked the the static camera angle.
Yeah.
Because it limited the character view and still kept everything a little intense, a little scary with all the enemies, because you wouldn't be able to see everything entirely. So it still, it didn't give you the exact feel of an FPS, but with limited view, it was as close as he was going to get.
I forget that the old Resident Evils had the tank controls with the fixed camera. It was almost like you were looking through a security camera.
Yeah.
As you come around them. Yeah.
There's actually there's an Easter egg that you can do. So Resident Evil 5 has a DLC where Chris and Jill go back to, I'm pretty sure they go back to the Spencer Mansion because they're looking for.
They go to Spencer's actual mansion.
And there's a cool little Easter egg where when you walk in, because that's a traditional third person shooter layout. But if you interact with the front door, I think it's about 5 times. But if you interact with it enough times, it will actually change to the static camera angle. And so
Really?
as you go through and you walk through this DLC, it actually puts you in that static angle as you navigate through.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
Lost
really,
in
really cool.
Yeah,
Lost in Nightmares.
Yeah.
I played Lost Nightmares and I did not know that that little
Oh, yeah.
feature. That's neat.
It's very interesting to play, especially a modern Resident Evil. I would love to see a return to form to that, because we have Resident Evil 7, which really took that first person element to it. And I've not played a ton of 7, but like, Jesus Christ, that game is horrifying. It's one of the scariest games that I've like ever played, which I'm a big baby. It doesn't take a lot to scare me, but
Yeah, both 7 and 8 are in first person.
yeah. I would love to see a return to form for Resident Evil, back to that static camera angle, especially with what we can render nowadays. I think it'd be really, really interesting to see.
Be interesting to see. I don't know if they'll ever do it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It'd be an interesting like mode. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to play it all the time, because I enjoy the retroness of it, but I like smooth camera control. And
yeah,
I mean,
the GameCube remake of 1 with the static camera angle, and you could still have, and I mean, the upgrade to Switch, PS4, and all that, where you have like full motion controls rather than hand controls, but still have the static camera angle. It was so good, though.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I remember the remake for the GameCube still had the like tank controls and the static camera.
Yeah, that remake on the GameCube is fantastic.
I remember it coming out scaring the crap out of me. It was
Have
nice.
either of you seen or played the original Alone in the Dark?
I have seen it. I've never played it.
I've seen it, but seen it.
Yeah,
but never played it.
I'm in the same boat. The little bit that I have seen of that game, it makes total sense that that's the direction that they wanted to go, because like in that game, I don't think it's bad to say that game's pretty primitive even for its time. It's very polygonal. The stuff is not rendered the best, at least from what I remember. That didn't stop me from being terrified watching as like a monster started tearing through the hallway.
Yeah, but I mean, the game came out in '92, so
yeah,
give it a little leeway. But yeah, there was a whole lot of stuff that looked way better than it at the time.
Yeah,
and it might have just been because it was basically just a DOS game.
That's that's fair. It was just a point and click adventure if you really think about it.
Yeah, but it also had a whole lot of just instant death traps. So I'm
yes, it did.
Glad Resident Evil didn't go that route.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Like it just has a floor that you can walk over it one direction, and then whenever you're coming back out, if you walk back over the floor, it collapses and you die.
I remember
no indication that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which somebody pointed out, you can see on the floor where like the cracks pop up and the floor falls in, but you can see that whenever you walk over the first time. So it's one of those. It's archaic, so forgive it for some of it.
Yeah. But let's get back to Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I noticed you've got here, you said Mikami wanted the game to quote unquote feel like the player was the main character of a horror movie. Was there any more that he expounded on that or anything?
Yeah, his big thing was he'd went and watched an Italian movie that was just called Zombie, and he said the zombie also apparently inspired the zombies in the game because of how disappointed he was in the movie. He's like, this movie sucks so bad, I bet I can do it better. But no, it was he wanted it to feel like the player had like actual agency in the choices that they were making, and he's like it was basically, hey, if you're going to be that big dumb blonde running up the stairs, if you're going to yell at them, how about you actually try doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess to the extent he may have been looking at what Until Dawn done a little bit, but he still wanted a little more control over everything.
Okay,
He didn't expand too much on that in what I've seen, but
right, yeah. Interesting.
So I just looked up the zombie movie.
The Italian zombie.
The Italian. The description is strangers searching for a young woman's missing father arrive at a tropical island where a doctor desperately seeks to cause the cure for a recent epidemic of the undead. It's got a 6.8 on IMDb.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it until I'd seen that Mikami was insanely disappointed by it and was like, well, I can do that better.
This poster has like a gnarly looking zombie with some terrible teeth. And it just says, we're going to eat you, zombies. The dead are among us.
I mean, you know what? Sometimes spite is the biggest motivator.
There's no sometimes to it. Spite is the ultimate motivator.
Fair enough.
Apparently, it came out in 1979. Its original, wow. It says original Italian title, Zombie 2. But then Zombie 2 come out in 1988.
Okay.
What?
And apparently there were, this is Zombie 1979, original Italian title, Zombie 2. Zombie 2, 1988, original Italian title, Zombie 3.
Okay.
So is there another zombie?
What is this? Just Final Fantasy got a hold of naming zombie movies?
Apparently. So is this not the original Zombie?
I don't know, but Zombie 5 came out in 88 and it's called Killing Birds. Zombie 5 Killing Birds.
That's a Fast and the Furious style of naming a movie.
Jeez.
Yeah. All right then.
Okay. But yeah. I just wanted to give little tidbits on what I could, just a quick search on the zombie movie, but I went down a rabbit hole. I don't think we have time for.
I think
the first one might be called Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, and it came out in 1974.
Oh, okay. So the Wikipedia says Zombie 1978, original title Dawn of the Dead. And then Zombie 2 is 1979. And it's called Zombie 2. So is Dawn of the Dead the original zombie?
I smell a conspiracy.
I don't think that's...
I don't know.
That's a different rabbit hole. Okay.
This was a very quick search, and I'll have to look into it and maybe talk onto the Discord when I find some more information about this.
I do think it's pretty safe to say that Mikami succeeded in all aspects of it. I mean, I think at least for me, whenever I think of Resident Evil, one of the first things that I always think of is the moment you open that door and you just see the cutscene of that zombie just slowly turning its head to face you.
Oh yeah.
And it's terrifying. Even to this day, that is still one of the scariest moments in any kind of media, in my opinion, at the very least.
I agree. I remember the original, the remake for the GameCube. When you open a door and it shows the door, and it just slowly opens up, and you're like, "What the heck's going to be on the other side of this door? Please don't let this be a crimson head or."
The first one I just seen, it's called Zombie, and then it has in parentheses Dawn of the Dead, or just simply Dawn of the Dead. I don't think it's actually Dawn of the Dead. It was
just called Dawn of the Dead, maybe. I don't know.
It just happened to share a tagline.
Yeah.
No, it may actually just be Dawn of the Dead.
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh, I think that's I'll probably delve into a big hole here and figure out stuff. But we're talking about Resident Evil today, so
So yeah, anyway, Zombie was just out of pure spite inspired zombies being in Resident Evil, apparently. He did specifically say that it wasn't inspired by Romero's Dawn of the Dead, though. So,
yeah. That he knew of. It could have been just under a different name, apparently.
Who's under this mask? It's actually Dawn of the Dead.
It was Dawn of the Dead all along. Well, some of the best stuff is when somebody's like, I can do that better.
Yeah.
But that's awesome to know.
Yeah. But in actual development for it, the mentality from Fujiwara, the director, was take things as far as you can. We can always cut it or tone it down later.
Nice.
And I mean, that was like quote unquote for it. Yeah. It's like, okay.
Censors will get it later. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's kind of like the old way of getting stuff through cartoon censors. It's like, yeah, this part is so bad that they just didn't notice. I snuck this on it right through.
Yeah. Animaniacs was actually talked about that a lot. I remember like the writers would talk about how they would put a joke in. They'd be like, there's no way this is going to get through. So they would intentionally write a worse joke later. So they'd be more focused on the other joke and let the first joke through.
Yeah, that's always the secret is like, we want this to make it into the game. So we're going to write something that's 30 times as worse. So they go, well, that can't make it in, but you can keep this one.
Yeah.
That's tame in comparison to whatever in the freak you all thought we're doing with this one.
Yeah.
And GTA 5 was huge for that. I mean, that's partially one of the only reasons. Like, that game should not have hit market with an M rating.
Are you saying it should have hit with an A rating?
Oh, AO? Absolutely. But then they couldn't sell it on commercial markets.
Yeah, I never played it, so
that's a different topic. I don't want to get into it.
Yeah,
but Capcom actually didn't expect horror game to do well. So at the beginning of their development, everybody working on the game were either fresh hires or just people with extra time. It was basically just a side project that here, y'all work on this if you can, whatever.
That's a very common thing that I hear about a lot of games, not just Resident Evil games or anything like that, but that's something that I hear very, very often when you're listening through like the development periods of certain games is like, oh yeah, we're just we'll put out a mass hire, we'll hire like 80 people. We'll get them all in here. We'll immediately throw them onto this project because, what do we care? It's, we might get our investment back out of it if we're lucky, which is just wild to think about nowadays.
Yeah, it's insane. But
because Resident Evil is like arguably a household name.
Oh yeah,
I feel.
Oh, yeah. It was one of those like as the game developed, they seen what was coming out and it was like, oh, this may actually do good. So they started putting more and more people on it. So it did eventually get the workforce that it needed, really. But to start off,
better than what they do, I feel like do now. Now they put veteran game developers on big games and then tell them they're not allowed to do what they want to do. So
yeah, because it's all about the investors.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then also, it's because going back to it, it's just like I love this idea of like, push everything to the max. We can cut it out or tone it down later. And like nowadays, I feel like that type of mentality in the development world is so taboo. It's no, like we have to play it safe.
It was like this meme that I just recently seen. It's a tweet posted by an account called Amazoogle, like Amazon and Google, saying, here at Mega Corporation, one of our core values is number go up. Our other core value is rate at which number go up. These two core values guide us in our mission to exploit you as effectively as possible.
You ever watch the movie Robots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the upgrades, people upgrades. That's anytime I think of like a mega corporation, that's what my brain goes to every time.
Yeah,
100%.
that's about what development's turned into at this point.
Yeah, you got that right.
But,
so Capcom open to making a game designed to work against the player. So I guess like in that regard, because you've listed like the ink ribbons, the very limited healing, not actually having like an actual health bar. I guess to kind of pivot in a way like I'm trying to think of like how I want to word this. Is that something that you feel like if someone were to go back and be like, nah, let's maybe not do this, do you feel like it would still be Resident Evil?
No. And not entirely. It's the ink ribbons and the limited health, like the item inventory management, and just your health being like the little bar, the health heart monitor.
The heart monitor, yeah. I started to say the little beepy thing.
I started to say your health monitor, and I was like, well, I mean, that's one word, right?
Yeah. But yeah, heart monitor.
Yeah, it's your health monitor. You just go look at it, and it tells you how healthy you are. If it's a flat line, you is dead. I
mean, you're not wrong.
That's some Wally something right there.
But it's they came to Capcom, the executives, and was like, hey, we want to make the game actively work against the player. You know, you get a limited number of saves. Do I want to save now, or do I want to save later whenever I've got done more progress? But if I go forward, I could die and lose all this. It's like it adds to the tension and everything. So I feel like if you remove the ink ribbons and limited heals and everything, you lose part of what made the original Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
So
and look who was awoken. Look who was woken from his slumber.
Yeah, actually, I did fall asleep on the couch, and then I woke up and it was like, "Hey, we'll help your daughter with this essay." And I said, "Oh my!" So,
well, welcome to the party.
Yeah, that's an unfair situation, honestly. Like, you know, I imagine chefs don't want to come home and cook. I don't want to come home and work on essays. We gotta do it.
Well, welcome in, Lee.
Yeah, happy to be here, guys. I definitely want to jump back in here. I apologize for being so late in the podcast, but I love Resident Evil. I don't know that I'm as much as an aficionado as Cody is, but I do have an enthusiasm for it for sure. And I just did some content recently about it and read a book about it recently. So,
I mean, we were just on the part that your content was about too.
Yeah, I heard you talking about the ink ribbons, man. Yeah, like I think the limitation of all of this stuff is super important to the overall experience. Because like if you have infinite resources, you can do whatever you want. Like there's no concern. You know, it's like if you have just a few potions when you go into battle or whatever. No, I mean in other games, then you know you got to limit yourself. You got to be careful. But if you have everything you want, I mean, where's the challenge?
Oh, absolutely.
Apparently, Mikami had went to the Capcom executives and was like, "Hey, I want to make the game actively work against the player," and they were open to it. They just went, "Yeah, okay, sounds good."
Yeah, sure. We want this to be like a rough experience, but if they had not, dude, it probably would have been tossed to the side, because it makes people, it gives you that feeling or whatever.
Well, especially back in those days where, a lot of limitations with the hardware that you had, like you had to make your own difficulty back then. And that was fantastic.
All right. So can you kind of recap for me real quick?
We've went through all the way from Sweet Home down to we're talking about the actual development of the game right now.
Have you talked about the limitations of the hardware and that's why we got the scenes the way they are?
Yeah, mentioned inspiration from Alone in the Dark.
Oh yeah, very cool stuff.
That was also the inspiration for the pre-rendered backgrounds to be like that. Not just the camera angles.
Yeah, I went into Alone in the Dark after, like, I had seen Alone in the Dark maybe once before I played Resident Evil, and that's because my neighbor had a computer and he turned on Alone in the Dark, and I was like, oh, this is incredible. But I didn't really play it. I just kind of watched him play for a few minutes. When I went back to play it afterwards, I was like, man, this game is absolute trash compared to Resident Evil. It is so bad, man.
I mean, Well, we had to have it walk so Resident Evil could run.
Absolutely. And
and
it,
then
it barely
stumble a few
walked.
times and
Oh, okay, it was crawling, but honestly, it was crawling, and Sweet Home was walking, and then Resident Evil.
That's. I don't think we talked about it. None of us have actually played alone. in the
Yeah,
dark.
I'd never actually played it.
Dude, it's
I'd seen
bad.
it.
Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, it's one of those things that it's so bad to play. The controls are so bad that you might as well just turn on a YouTube video and watch somebody play a little bit of it and get that experience that way, man. It is just not worth it.
Glowing review.
It's beautiful. Like, it's really impressive. I mean, like I say, it's beautiful. If you look at it now, somebody's gonna be like, man, that guy's got something wrong with him. But it really is cool looking for the time. It was like way graphically, I think it was really impressive for its time. But my goodness, it is just so janky.
Speaking of the technical difficulties, though, Resident Evil was intended to have a 2-player co-op as well whenever it first released. It's supposed to have Jill and Chris both playable at the same time.
Oh
wow.
But technical difficulties, they dropped it pretty early on in development. It's like, we're not going to be able to do this. Get it actually functioning.
Dude, it seems like the early development for Resident Evil was just plagued with issues because like they had these grand ideas, and that's where Sweet Home stems from, right? It's like where Resident Evil came from is like this idea that they have these grand ideas, these awesome concepts, but they were just limited by their technology.
Well, I mean, it started out first person with, then there's going to have co-op, and then all technology just got all of it.
Would it have been as scary if you'd had co-op though?
No.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think with co-op, it's just when knowing somebody else is there, it's like, man, that's so much more comforting. Just like having somebody else in the same room with you while you're playing a scary game or watching a scary movie. If you're by yourself, it's like that loneliness is part of the experience, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the difficulties in the development made the game into what it is. So
for sure.
It made it into what we love. So
seems like there's something weird too. Like maybe that they had tried that again in Resident Evil 2 and it was also an issue. Because I mean, it was just seems like every game has been like, well, the first 3 were plagued. Before we're plagued with the issues of like, hey, we want to do this, but we don't have the tech.
Yeah, well, 2 started out with completely different. Had what was it, Elza Walker as a character, and that's called Resident Evil 1.5 now. If you can find it, there's still like demos of it, but it was almost entirely different.
Yeah, and they had to scrap the whole thing.
Yeah.
4 started out as Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the original run of 4 became Devil May Cry. Yeah.
And that was actually Shinji wanted that, didn't he? He wanted like a more action oriented approach, maybe.
Yeah, he kept going more action oriented.
Yeah.
And then they were like, "Oh, this is a different thing," and then it took on a life of its own. And they ran with that, and they're like, "Okay, now back to square one. We got to make a game. We got to make Resident Evil."
Yeah, and then Shinji came back and was like, "Fine, I'll fix it again."
Came back and was like, "Oops, wrong game."
Yeah, sorry. I had this idea, and it turned out to be the wrong game.
Well, he wanted it action oriented, and they took that and they just went with it. And he wasn't actually working on the game at the time. He was just kind of there. He was just kind of like a
advisor.
Thank you.
Yeah. So they bring this to him, I guess, and they say, "Hey, this is what we made."
And he's like, "Okay, he's like, I like it, I do, but that's not Resident Evil."
So I told you cheesecake, and you made pineapple upside down cake. No, don't throw it in the garbage. Like it's good.
No, don't throw it away. It's still good. We still use this. Just imagine.
It can still make us money.
So he eventually worked on Resident Evil 4. Like he came back and worked on it and made it into what it is. But
go ahead, I was just going to say, Mikami is on record as saying that he has never and will never play Resident Evil 5, right? Because he didn't have anything to do with 5. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, he quit after 4.
Yeah.
Like he was done after 4.
In the first game, like he did a lot of other games though. Like a lot of other games he was involved in. And then he kind of he came back to horror with that one game that we got on PS4. What was it called?
Evil Within.
Yes, that one. Okay, I haven't played that. Have you guys played that?
I've played a small portion.
Some of it. and I got to a boss on it, and it made me mad, and I quit playing, and then I forgot about it. So I need to go back and finish it.
The letterboxing on that game made me very angry because it is way too extreme.
Oh, really?
Like, just I don't mind a little bit of letterboxing, especially in like cutscenes and stuff like that. But the letterboxing is like a fourth of the top and bottom of the string of the string during gameplay. Not even just during cutscenes, during gameplay. It's a little too harsh, and there's no way to like reel it back.
Is this cinematic enough for you, son?
What made me mad though, whenever I was playing it, is there was a boss that you had to drop down into like fire, and I pulled the lever and dropped it down into the fire to kill it, but it reached out and grabbed me as it was falling and pulled me in with it and killed me. The trophy procced for me killing it, and then I respawned back at the start of the fight and had to do it again.
Oh, dude, that happened to me on Elden Ring pretty often. But that game's also, intended to be pretty rough.
So, Shinji Mikami, I'll make sure I say
Mikami.
that. Mikami didn't play Resident Evil until 2011. It released in 2009. Or it did RE5. Yeah, RE5 until 2011.
Wow.
I just found an article that said he did finally play it.
See, I only played the demo of 5 and I haven't played since. So
it's decent, really. It's fine.
As a single player game, because this is like Resident Evil 5 is one of those games that like I hold it near and dear to my heart. Me and my best friend Devin, we spent, this is no joke, this is no exaggeration, we spent an entire summer, like we were off from college, and we spent an entire summer. We played that game every day.
Wow.
And I mean, it got to a point where like we were doing challenge runs all on our own. So it was just like, I can only use handguns and shotguns. Devin was only allowed to use machine guns. We couldn't use any other weapon. If we got any other of the weapons, we either had to sell it or stow it. And we were doing like, I'm one of the characters in that game. Her name is Sheva, and I always ended up playing as Sheva, and she's left-handed, and her camera reflects that, so it's at a different angle than say on Chris's. And so we did a challenge run where we swapped characters. That was so fun because we were god-awful. We could not shoot. We absolutely were just dead off lane. But literally every day for a summer, play that game. It's a great co-op game. It's a subpar Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's a testament. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the AI for the single player is brain dead.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you play as Sheva or Chris, doesn't matter. Whichever one you're not controlling is an idiot.
And that's you being nice.
I enjoyed it the same way I enjoyed Resident Evil 6. I enjoyed it for the multiplayer experience, and that was basically it.
Yeah.
It was a decent game. It was a very action-oriented Resident Evil game.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed it for the multiplayer experience at the very least. I played with my cousin, so we had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, playing by yourself was miserable with that AI.
So I wonder too, like if that's a testament as to what would it have been if Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil Part 1 had been co-op. It's like it's Part 5, what would have happened. It would have been a fun but forgettable experience,
I'd say probably it probably would have lost a lot of the charm to it.
Like I said, I feel like it would have lost a lot of the horror aspect. I don't remember Resident Evil 5 ever being scary at all.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I guess it would be kind of funny to be like if you're both tank controls and you're like trying to turn them hard, like, please stop, shoot the dog, shoot the dog.
It's going. So one player's going back and forth, the camera switching back.
Oh God, imagine that, but with the fixed camera angles.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's what I want. Resident Evil 9 win.
Soon, hopefully.
Yeah, seriously.
That's okay. Not to jump off subject, but that is going to be a continuation of like his daughter's story, right?
Don't
I have
know.
no idea. Maybe.
Oh, okay. I thought that was like I know it kind of ended with like, hey, he has a daughter in 8, right?
Yeah.
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 So if it carries on with that, I think I'd be okay with that. Yeah.
I was actually very surprised that they continued with Ethan's story in 8 from 7
Yeah. It was good.
because you don't get a lot of them that continue. There for a while, it was new characters, even though there was an ongoing story. It was new characters every time for a long time.
Well, it was Chris and Jill in 1, and then Leon and Claire in 2, and then Jill in 3,
Yeah.
and then Claire in Code Veronica, and then Leon in 4. So they only introduced new characters in the first 2 games, really.
Oh, that's true.
I guess Carlos technically shows up in 3.
Yeah, Carlos is a new guy.
He lived, so I mean, he could come back.
Yeah.
Are we going to forget the best character they ever introduced in a Resident Evil game, Ashley? Come on now.
Ashley. I thought you was going to say, what is it, Steve from Code Veronica?
Hunk.
Oh, dude, Steve was
Hunk.
Steve?
Steve Burnside.
I don't know, Steve.
His cutscenes are just so bad. Like, I mean, I played through it on Twitch, and dude, I laughed so much. Like, it's a good game.
I love
his
Code
dialogue
Veronica,
his dialogue is awful. His delivery is awful. It's like
that's what I was getting ready to ask. Is it a combination of it's written poorly and it's acted poorly, or is it just acted poorly? Okay.
It's both.
Yes. It's
I
like,
mean,
you should
it's
look at some
even bad
compilations
for Resident Evil standards, and that's saying something because
that's
none
saying
of their acting is good, really.
Yeah.
Jill Sandwich deserves like an Oscar compared to
You were almost Jill Sandwich.
You saying that, I want to interject this right fast because it's one of the funniest things. Going back to Resident Evil 5, you can like call for your partner to like come over to you or whatever, and like you have a lot of the standard ones, where Sheva is just like, come on, Chris, get over here. But there is one in the DLC where it's Chris and Jill. The way that Chris says Jill kills me because he literally goes, Jill. I'm like, what in the what? Like, bro, what happened, man? The VA's name escapes me right now, but like, I was just like, what are you doing, my man?
I just think of that video, Cody. The song with Barry.
Oh, you were almost
yeah. They just made like this remix of Barry saying Jill Sandwich. It was just, you were almost a Jill Sandwich.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I guess it's part of Legacy, maybe it's relate, or Impact. But the Jill Sandwich thing, that line was changed in the remake, wasn't it?
It was.
That's unfortunate. Like, I think once you set up something like that, man, you're kind of obligated to stick to it.
They still reference it kind of, because it's like, if I was a little bit later, you'd have fit nicely into a sandwich.
There we go.
It's the impact's still not the same.
They reference it in Revelations 2.
Oh, really?
The release trailer for Revelations 2 there's this big banquet, and as it's scrolling through, it's showing, it starts all day, everything's fine and normal, and as they're scrolling through, everything starts falling apart, people start turning into zombies, but on the table there is a placard and a tray of sandwiches, and the placard says Jill's Sandwiches.
Well, it's Barry's daughter with her, and at one point she saves her, and she's like, you were almost a Jill Sandwich, and she's like, oh, did Barry tell you about that as well?
Jill's not in Revelations 2, it's Claire.
Is it Claire? Yeah.
Yes.
I get it mixed up too.
I remember them referencing the sandwich joke though, because it's Barry's
Claire
daughter.
wouldn't know about it.
No, maybe
unless
I'm wrong.
Chris told her, but Chris wasn't in the first one, or wasn't in the part where that happened anyway. So the game started out with just a simple horror game title, and they eventually picked up Biohazard as the actual Japanese title. But moving the game into the US, they couldn't use Biohazard because there was already a band that had the name, and there was another game.
Yeah, there was another game that had the actual name Biohazard, because it started out as 2 words and they shortened it to 1 word, or they put it into 1 word. And there was another game and a band that had it in the US, so they called it Resident Evil. Until Resident Evil 7, where they got to merge the 2 names into Resident Evil Biohazard. And the funny trivia that I thought was really great, I didn't know, in Japan, the game called Biohazard Resident Evil.
Yep.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was like, hey, that's cool. They just switched the names.
My favorite thing about both of the naming conventions is that they found a way to write out the 7 in both versions of the name.
Yeah.
Because because if you look at, Resident Evil 7, portions of Resident Evil are colored differently to make the 7, but it's the exact same way with Biohazard, which I thought was just a really, really, really cool touch.
Yeah.
So here's something I thought was kind of neat. Like, even with the name Biohazard, when I first, long time ago when I was first playing Resident Evil, when I first looked at the game, I was like, well, Resident Evil's a great name. But when I heard it was called Biohazard in Japan, I was like, well, that's kind of odd. Like, I feel like where's the resident part, that sort of thing. Because I like the mansion, honestly. I like the residence. And so I was a little bummed. I was like, but it makes more sense in the long run. But then I got to think about it. I was like, really, Resident Evil is not necessarily about, if you think about it, not as like a physical residence, but you think it as in resident, as in waiting, like an evil that is inside and waiting, kind of fits the whole Biohazard thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently
the
they
virus
actually
is taking residence within your body.
Yeah, they actually had a competition within the company to come up with the name.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. They had a company-wide contest held to see who could come up with the name for this US debut. And eventually Capcom chose Resident Evil. And the pun on the fact the first game took place inside of a mansion, and the series has gone by 2 different names ever since.
Yeah, it's pretty brilliant.
Interesting.
Yeah. According to this article on CBR that I read earlier today, and I just brought up.
Yeah, see, because when I was kicking that idea around, I was like, well, every game really does focus more so on the biohazard portion of it. It's about the zombies or whatever else. But I was like, there's always like some kind of residence too. I was like, whether it's the train or the house or the house in 7, that sort of thing. Well, there's not always, but pretty consistently it starts with, here's a residence as well.
Apparently there was a DOS game registered under the same name as Biohazard, and the second was a heavy metal band.
So, do you guys remember the opening cutscene of the first game?
Absolutely.
It was originally in color. Like, you could see everything, off the like blood dripping off the dog's mouths and everything. And apparently with like reviewers or like test screeners or whatever that watched it, they thought it was too scary. So they went back and made it black and white. And then they looked at it for a second and was like, we think that might have made it even more terrifying.
It really is.
Let's leave it. It's fine.
It's good, man. Like, I remember the first time I turned it on and seeing that, I was like, I probably used some kind of expletive to describe it, but I was like, man, like that is, this was like I don't know how to put it. It was such a legendary thing for me to get a hold of anyway, because this was at Sean's video. We used to rent out of Virgie. I remember seeing it on the wall so often, man, and in the big long box on the wall. It's to the left of the counter when you walked in, but it was always rented out. And then one day, man, it just happened to be there, and I was like, yes. And so, I got it. I take it home, turn it on. And I was like, my goodness, what have I done?
This is amazing.
Yeah, just blown away, man. I was all the anticipation I built up, like looking at it in the magazines, looking at the box art and everything. I was so tore out the frame waiting for it.
And that our release was more difficult?
I did not know that, but I was looking at your show notes here. Holy smokes, dude.
Yeah,
That's like some working designs kind of garbage over there.
they done it specifically to combat the rental stores because they didn't want the game beatable in like
Ah.
1 or 2 rentings. So it was trying to encourage people to actually buy the game. So, they gave more enemy health, less player health, fewer ink ribbons, less ammo. They disabled an auto aim.
Oh wow.
Well, joke's on them. I just spent a lot of money renting it.
Yeah.
Which apparently,
What a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, apparently in the director's cut, they implemented all that back in. They put it all back in. It's like, whatever. So the original long box version is more difficult than the director's cut.
Just looking ahead in the show notes and seeing the next thing that's up, which is, kind of delving into what the overall story of Resident Evil covers. My favorite line my favorite line in this is just government cover-ups, because whoo boy.
This entire series is government cover-ups. As is real world.
Whisker did 9/11.
Oh
God.
Well, it's if we're going to get into the story, it's Umbrella became a pharmaceutical company, and that was a cover-up to the research that they were doing to try to evolve the human race. And Spencer was also looking for immortality, but it was more so about evolution, really. But they done the pharmaceutical company as a cover-up, and then for extra funding, they started selling the viruses they made as bioweapons to the military and any other country's military that would pay them. So basically, whenever everything started going up in flames and came out that Umbrella was doing all this stuff, every government was like, we know nothing happened there. We gotta get away from that.
Yep.
Capitalism.
Immediately distance yourself.
And then they nuked a city.
Was that 2?
Yeah, 2 is the one that they actually nuked the city in first. And then it happened again in 3, but it was same city, just different point of view.
Now, I guess on the subject of stuff like this, so Resident Evil was about what was the original virus? Because I always get them confused. Was the original? Yeah, the original was the T virus, right?
T virus is the original one that made the zombies and everything, but the original virus that was used was the progenitor virus.
Okay. Because I know that Resident Evil 4, and I guess sort of by extension Resident Evil 5, were both something like similar but different, because that's where you get into the whole like Plagas.
4 uses the Plagas. It had no virus in it. It was just a virus. 5 was a mix of the Plagas and the T virus to make Ouroboros.
Yeah. Oh, Ouroboros. It's one of the most legendary lines that Wesker has in the franchise. It's right towards the end of the game, and he's staring down Chris and Sheva, and he just says, "We will release Ouroboros into the atmosphere to ensure it." What is it? He says, "To ensure
complete global saturation."
Yeah, complete global saturation. That's such a hard line.
The most evil plan.
Yeah,
global
seriously.
Saturation.
I mean, if you really sit and think about it,
do you saturate your globes?
No.
I mean, this dude is literally just freaking coating the entire planet in this Ouroboros and literally just turning the entire world into one being, into Ouroboros, which is terrifying.
Essentially. Yeah.
You think that's how it went with like Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift.
Total global saturation. Swifty zombies.
They're the same thing.
Zombies.
Zombies.
Mombies.
What?
Swambies.
Yeah, swambies.
Swambies.
Oh.
But I mean, we could go on for the story forever because you have T virus, G virus, C virus,
Yeah.
A virus. There's a whole different swath of
What did Ethan have?
mold.
You're the back case of black mold.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a mold.
essentially. Yeah.
I mean, it all fits the whole biohazard thing, right? It's all like dangerous, messing with your chemistry sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
And going back and thinking, I think the only characters across all the media that has not been infected with something that I can think of right off was Chris, Barry. I think it's just Chris and Barry.
oh,
Yeah.
really? Did Jill not get it? Or did Jill get it?
Yeah, Jill gets
Yeah.
infected in 3.
3.
Okay.
And then,
Just kind of like waifu mama? Like, I've not played through 3. So.
yeah, she gets infected from Nemesis, and then they take her to the hospital, and they find a vaccine there.
Ah, that's convenient.
Well, it was an Umbrella ran hospital. So,
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
because it was in Raccoon City. The city was owned by Umbrella. But
Chris and
Leon was
Sheva
infected
get
with the Plagas.
something in 5, don't they?
Sheva is not infected, no. She doesn't get anything. Chris doesn't get anything at any point.
Chris is such a Chad dude. He's been in since the
I'm
beginning.
pretty sure if they tried to inject him with a needle, the needle would break.
Yeah, dude. Him in 7 and I guess it was 8. And yeah, it was 7 and 8. I think that has Chris in it, right?
Yeah, he's in both.
Dude,
Yeah. He's at
cracks
the
me
end
up.
of 8, or at the end of 7. But
He's very different.
Yeah, he's just like, shut up, Ethan. Yeah, we got problems to solve now.
Well, I mean, dude did punch a boulder.
Are you
so-
aware? I was about to say, are you aware of the scene in 5?
Oh yeah.
are you aware of the reference to it in 8?
Yes, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I thought 7 and 8 were
I'm-
wonderful.
That boulder punching freak.
I'm so aware of that reference. At Comic-Con one year, at our local Comic-Con, there was a guy who was selling badges, and you could get like not necessarily custom badges, but like you'd get your face and stuff printed on them. And so me and Devin have Umbrella Corps made for it. And Devin
Nice.
says boulder punching freak, and mine were punching freak.
Nice.
That was one of the best. That was one of the best details I learned about that game when it came out.
I enjoy 7 and 8. The more I look at 8, though, the more I'm a little disappointed at the end game of it. It's like the first 2 sections came out swinging really strong, and then I didn't really care for the 3rd section that much, and then the 4th
Was that the
one was
puppet
just
section?
okay. No, the puppet section was the 2nd one.
Okay, so the 3rd was the
like-
fish.
I like the puppet one because I mean it was pretty different and it was very horror based. So I was like, I'm into this. I like it. The 3rd one, like there wasn't anything other than Moreau there. It was like, oh, just not feeling this one. Just not.
Yeah.
Overall, though, the game's still really good.
It seemed like the further that game went, the less, the more action it gave, and less horror.
Yeah, which I mean is the same thing that 4 did.
Yeah,
So
100%.
Castle is the best section of 4, though. Hands
I
down.
just want to point out I sent a video of them mentioning the sandwich in Revelations 2. It's Claire. They're at a trash compactor, and Claire climbs out, and she was like, "I was almost a Claire sandwich." And Barry's daughter's like, "Did Barry tell everyone that joke?"
Okay.
So they do mention it. I was correct.
Expected to sell about 200,000 copies. And I think
Yeah, they
Shattered
weren't
is
expecting the
an
game to do well.
Yeah, Shatter's an understatement there.
Yeah, but
Sold around
they
almost 3 million units. That's wild, especially for that era of gaming too.
Oh yeah.
sold 2.75 million units, but it would go on to sell a total of 4 million units by December of 97, and then 5.08 million units across all versions. And that's just talking about the original long box release and like the director's cut on the PS1. That's just the PS1 copies.
So
Those numbers are kind of funny to think about because like those numbers are pretty bad by today's standards. Like, I saw the other day that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero had hit like 3 million in a week.
Right. And think about how many people actually had a PS1 in '96.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying though, is it's just like it's remarkable to see that, but like comparing that to today, like Jesus.
Yeah, and they're upset over the 3 million. They're like,
You
Yeah,
also
right,
have
yeah.
to look at the budget, because how much money did they put into Sparking Zero?
That's
No,
true.
How many millions?
Probably more than I could ever fathom.
So that's something a lot to think about as well. Is like when you talk about how many PlayStation 1s there were out there. I mean, I know it wasn't a 1-to-1 ratio, but it couldn't have been too far off from like about every other person that owned a PlayStation at that point probably had Resident Evil. So that's a lot.
Yeah, I think it pretty well sold the, like it may have outsold the game, the system. I don't know, because once it hit the director's cut and everything.
I don't know. Once his director cut and stuff, sure. I was like, I don't know if more people bought more Resident Evils for their PS1. Like, I need another copy for my PS1.
Actually, that was the thing for N64, dude. For Mario 64, I believe, is that it sold at more than a 1-to-1 ratio.
Really?
Yep. It was. I'm pretty sure it was that, and then maybe even Breath of the Wild, because it seems like Breath of the Wild for the Switch did the same thing, because people weren't able to get Switches at first, but they were still buying copies of Breath of the Wild briefly. More copies of Breath of the Wild were out there.
I can't say anything. You know, I bought Skyward Sword when it released on the Wii, and I didn't own a Wii. So,
say I own 2 copies of Tales of Symphonia. So, and that's not talking about its remake either. That's I owned 2 copies of the GameCube version at one point.
Fair. All right. You know what? Put it in the mouth. You showed me.
Okay, so by March of 1999, the PlayStation had shipped 50 million units. That's a lot. But this was still like 97 or so. So they weren't that many out. But this was a monstrous system. First system to sell over 100 million units in under a decade. So,
dang.
Yeah, the PlayStation 1's a beast. Not like the PlayStation 2 or the Switch, but
yeah, I was gonna say I unfortunately didn't have my PS1 for very long, so I missed out on a lot of those early games because mine short circuited.
Oh, dang!
Mine did too. And I bought another one because I don't remember what I did. Like, I didn't have the money. I don't know where it came up from. Maybe I stole it, dude. I don't know. Somehow I ended up with another PlayStation.
When did the PlayStation 1 come out?
95-ish in the US, I think.
95-ish. Cool. I was 1.
1994, December 3rd of 1994.
Oh, I was.
On Japan.
September 9th, 1995 for the US.
95 in US. Sorry.
Cool. I was 1 when the PS1 came out.
And you didn't have a PlayStation 1? How dare you?
I had a PS1.
You should have had a PS1 and Resident Evil by that point.
Yeah.
We had an NES, a Super Nintendo, and an N64. And I remember getting the PS1, and I was trying to play Digimon World 2, and I claimed the disc, and then my PlayStation short-circuited, and we never got another one.
I can't say anything, Travis. I didn't own a PS1 until many years later because I owned an N64. So,
dude, that was such a time of weird. Like, I don't want to get off track here, but think about the systems. That's what a time of rapid change in technology for video games. I know we're still in this point, but like, to give you an idea, Donkey Kong Country released in November 21st, 1994. Less than a year later in the US, we got the PlayStation 1. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And like, Donkey Kong Country was already pushing the boundaries of like what you could do on its console, let alone just for technology in general, because they were taking, the whole thing with the game of like rendering a 3D model and then putting it into a 2D space. Like, that was not a thing that you saw a lot of games do. Of course, Mortal Kombat would come in and do something very similar. And then, like you said, here we are a year later, actual 3D graphics, a 32-bit system.
Yeah.
Dude, you know, this is a great story. I'm going to have to tell at some point. I'll make a YouTube video about it. Do you know what came out the same day as Donkey Kong Country?
What?
The 32X. And Donkey Kong Country shot it in the head, dude.
Really?
Yeah. So,
I can imagine which one sold better.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So, you know, Sega was like, we can do pretty cool looking 3D graphics. And then Nintendo the same day released Donkey Kong Country and just killed it in its crib, dude.
Hold my beer, boy.
Right. I was like,
Hold my
God,
bananas.
Yeah.
that's such an unfortunate story, dude. It's like, dang, boys.
You know what they say. Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah, I suppose so. Question
You
mark.
know, like go out of business.
Yeah.
They didn't go out of business. They just quit selling consoles.
Oh, that's true.
And then got bought by Atlas. Or no, Sega bought Atlas. It's one or the other.
Yeah, Sega bought Atlas.
That's what it is.
One way, you know, somebody bought somebody.
Yeah, somebody bought somebody. There was an exchange of money, whatever. We got Persona games now. Anyways, a point that you have written down here, which I think is really interesting to see, is that the idea of zombies was already becoming a stale topic, even like into the late 80s, like early 90s, which I think is funny because I don't think it was like, I think they're stale today, but
Agreed.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I mean,
go ahead.
I think like Dawn of the Dead. When did it come out? 78, something like that.
I don't know.
79.
Do you mean Dawn of the Dead or Zombie?
Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Romero's. When did it came out early?
78.
And came out when?
78.
78.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they had a lot of zombie stuff around that time, and then it all just kind of petered out and died. And it just kind of. Can you think of anything zombie related in the late 80s and early 90s other than Evil Dead? Is there anything? I mean, sure, there's something. But
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
the
I was gonna
stuff.
say nothing that comes to my head.
Let's see.
It's pretty well Evil Dead was like the only big zombie related thing from the late 80s.
Yeah, Army of Darkness is 92. There were a few. I don't recognize them.
Yeah,
Night of the
so,
Living Dead was 1990.
Yeah,
But-
and I mean, Night of the Living Dead wasn't exactly received super well.
Yeah.
Probably a cult classic, and like everybody likes it now. But I think upon release, it wasn't great.
Yeah,
So I mean,
there's-
everybody's talking like, yeah, zombies are on their way out. And then Resident Evil happens, and it just takes off again. And I found it was 3 people specifically mentioned that they think Resident Evil is what revived the zombie. And it was Simon Pegg, Shaun of the Dead, Greg Nicotero, which was a special effects makeup artist for Walking Dead, and Alex Garland, who is a writer on 28 Days Later.
That's some pretty good pedigree for people mentioning zombies.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know what you're talking about. I think it was 1991. A movie called Zombie Cop came out. During a drug raid, narcotics officer confronts a strange voodoo priest named Dr. Death, who was chanting. The officer and the priest shoot it out, and they both wind up dead.
No, I think we have to give credit to Beverly Hills Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
or
You guys got me.
Chud 2, Bud the Chud. I searched late 80s zombies, and it brought me to this IMDb list. And there's a movie on here called Chud, which is an acronym, by the way.
Oh.
It's Chud 2, Bud the Chud. A military experiment to create a race of super warriors goes awry, and legions of murderous zombies are unleashed upon a suburban neighborhood.
All right, then.
I now need to go watch Bud the Chud.
Yeah, definitely. Resident Evil was probably, without a doubt, a big influence on the rise of. Because I remember early 2000s, I was really big. Zombie movies were really picking up again, and I was really big into zombies and stuff back then.
Oh yeah, like board games, video games. My
Mhm.
goodness, the Resident Evil movie. Like I loved
Oh,
it, dude.
jeez. The original?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I actually love the original.
The
I
original
still
was,
enjoy it.
yeah, the original was decent. Anything after that was
Questionable.
Yeah.
See, I like it's hard because it's hard to say because I can't say they're good movies, but I enjoy the original Resident Evil series movies for entertainment purposes, but I can't say that they're good Resident Evil movies. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And
it's the same way that I say Resident Evil 6 is a solid game. It's just not a good Resident Evil game.
Sure.
Yeah. You all talking about like, Resident Evil bringing back zombies and, kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily putting them in a limelight, but definitely like raising interest, especially going into the 2000s, jumping into another video game series that is known for its zombies, looking at like the Call of Duty games, like the zombies mode in those games are the biggest reason why most people buy those games anymore. No one cares about the multiplayer. They want to play zombies.
It's like there's no evidence of this, but like, would we have Call of Duty zombies or even Left 4 Dead, say, if zombies hadn't have been resurged through Resident Evil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good possibility. But it's interesting to think that it's a possibility that we wouldn't.
Yeah, it's weird to think of
The
like
developers may not think that that's a good idea
Mhm.
since zombies become stale.
Oh yeah. I mean, without a doubt, a lot of developers look and go, "Hey, what's selling? Let's make something related to that."
Yeah, that period of time in the 2010s where everything had a battle royale.
Oh yeah.
It was like every game either was a battle royale or had a battle royale mode to introduce.
Yeah. I mean, recently, I remember, I think it was just last year, everything seemed to have some kind of farming element to it.
Everything is a farming sim.
Or crafting. Thank you, Minecraft.
Yeah.
Now I'm fine with a good craft system, but you gotta don't piecemeal it. Like you've actually got to put some thought into it.
All right, so I believe that might be a good place to call it. We've been going for a while.
Yeah.
Well, we're closing in on, I think, an hour and a half, 2 hours total recording.
Let's not pretend like any of us have been keeping track of the time. So
Greg tells me how long.
Oh.
Yeah, we're a little over an hour and a half. We're good.
Yeah. Craig, you snitch.
I believe this is a good point. Like, if I don't call it, I could sit here and talk for the next 6 hours.
Oh, I'm
Resident
sure.
Evil alone.
Especially
I'm sure Lee probably could with me. But
yeah, I love talking about it, man. It's good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably a good way to mention that too, is like the whole come on our Facebook. Come on our Facebook and talk to us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially Resident Evil. You can get me, Lee. I'm sure you can get any of us talking about Resident Evil super easy. Hop in our Discord, come on our Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the YouTube channel as well, because it should be coming out on there. Same time now. Yeah.
Let me channel my inner Josh for our little closeout here.
Please.
If you like what you heard, come on our Facebook, come join the Discord. We have a Discord here, and you can find every single one of us here in the Discord. Check out our YouTube. We have been uploading. We've been trying to make sure that everything's coming out concurrently. And so where can everybody find everybody? Let's start with you, Lee.
You can find me mostly on Twitch at twitch.tv/pixelbroly or YouTube at youtube.com/pixelbroly. I do a lot of stuff on there, and I'd be happy to hear from you. And I'm on most of the socials at pixelbroly.
Where can they find you, Cody?
And mainly you can find me in the Discord, but I also run a Twitch. It's Coffee Break Lounge, and I'm on there just once a week. Not super often, but close enough.
Mr. Aaron, where can they find you?
Shambling through the streets from the exhaustion of the everyday slog of no longer being in Japan, like a zombie that I am anymore.
Are you going on a zombie Body part hunt.
Yeah.
Scavenger hunt.
Hiding body parts in the streets of Bible until I go back to Japan.
You know what? That's fair. And you can find me here in the Discord. You can find me under Chocobo STO, or you can find me on Twitter with the exact same name. If you want to rant about RPGs or you want to talk about Final Fantasy 14, dear God, I hope you have 14 hours setback. But yeah, I think we're good.
That's good. Remember, we do have an email. It is heelshavenerds@gmail.com. Remember, there's
Yes.
no the
No
in
the.
front of that.
Yeah, that is heelshavenerds.gmail. You know what? It's whatever.
Heelshavenerds@gmail.com.
Thank you.
There you go.
We'd love to hear
There's a
from
lucky
you.
deck in the basement for that one.
Yeah,
We'd love to hear both good and bad.
I'm just going to shamble back in there like the zombie I am.
As you should. Yeah, let's put Travis back in his dungeon, and until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Look at my feet.
Thanks for listening, and remember, a review helps a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.
1,
2,
3,
4.